that's such an emotional conversation when we talk about mobility. I hear people who say, I don't want to stop driving. I never quit this. I never will stop taking the steering wheel. And please unmute yourself, so let's have this an open conversation. I would love to be part of a conversation that tackles the momentum of fear and anxiety. What if people would say, instead of yes buts, yes ends, towards the fact that streets are going to change dramatically? Yeah. Autonomous cars will be slow. Right now we're drivers, and if we're constantly putting ourselves in a reference to other drivers, this is why we're driving fast.
Yeah. Well,
Martin.
Yeah, we do this tests in Berger since 2 years. And of course, our shuttle is just driving 12, 13 kilometers per hour. And because it's okay for the street, we had also a test in the pedestrian area of Klagenfurt. Of course, there was the driving speed, I would say 7, 8 kilometer per hour, so a little bit faster than the people are walking. And what we saw in our showcases, of course, the people are in the first moment, they say, okay, I don't know. But if they see the shuttle and if they go with the shuttle, the fear is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the speed will make a dramatic change in the street. Right, it doesn't. You don't have to. If you're in an autonomous, I mean, do you ever care that the tram is going too slow, or the train? Do you ever care that the plane is flying too slow? No, you don't care. Right, you're in that system that moves. And how does you want to be somewhere on time, right? You don't want to you don't want to run late. You want to arrive safely and you want to be on time. So if everything goes slower on the street, how does this affect noise? Right. So now we have the fossil engines disappearing from the street. That already will reduce sound. Now we still hear the tires. So that's what we hear from the EVs. We hear the wheels on the street, the rolling. But if they go with 10 miles an hour or 20 kilometers per hour, we won't even hear this. How is the street going to be separated? Boston, I think 20 years or 25 years ago, started putting the streets underground. Half of the city is tunnels, and you're basically, most of the traffic on the surface is humans. How would that be separated?
Nikki, I've been doing some work on this. The noise is caused by the road surface, in that the road surface is not porous, and so as the tires go over, they squeeze air out. And that causes the noise. So we've got lots of experimental road surfaces which are dealing with that. But it seems to me, because I've done some work on this with the infrastructure, is that if it's perceived that getting on public transport is simply a wasting your time, as opposed to in a car where you choose what to listen to, or if you go on a plane, you may have internet access. It's the utility of your time, which seems to be it. So if the train journey is interesting, so you've got good internet, you've got decent food, then you don't see it as an intervention in your time. But if the train, you do nothing other than sit there, then that is boring and wasting time. And so we are starting to see much more in the way of getting it to be an experience such you actually look forward to it as that moment when you got access to something else.
Ulrich Sutherland put this really nicely in his TED Talk in 2009, where he said, they've spent 10 billion pounds to make the train from London to Paris 10 minutes faster. And it would cost them a fraction if they would have hostesses going through the train offering a drink for free. And everyone would say, I like this. Why not spend another 20 minutes in the train? So the being faster idea is definitely outdated. I just want to, if that's okay for you, I just want to interrupt that conversation for a second. And for all of you, just to acknowledge the level of conversation that we're having right now, because out there, a lot of people are saying this is not going to happen. And I just want to remind you that when you talk about autonomous cars as when is this going to happen, or if this is going to happen, you're already behind the curve. there's no conversation about autonomous cars. There is a conversation about the consequences of autonomous cars in this room here, which is extraordinary, because when you sign off here and you go to your peers, I'm sure you will not have this conversation. I'm sure they will talking about, it's not going to happen in the next 15 years. Just to kind of be conscious about the level of conversation that we're having here. And I think that it's not 15 years. I don't think it's 20 years. I think it's going to be a lot faster. And from the conversations where people say it's going to be 15 or 20 or more years, A, they say, I don't want to talk about it right now. But also B, they think they can decide. And obviously, I mentioned this in the chat earlier. I think that the idea that we can decide all of these things also will face us with a brutal reality that it's not going to be a choice anymore. Certain areas of the city. We also have the experiment in Vienna in the Seestadt, which is basically literally translated in Lake City or Lake Town, where you have an autonomous bus going around. And the whole city is an experiment. The whole part of the city is under construction, but it's a very interesting experiment with all the segments that we're looking at. Autonomous doesn't only mean that cars are driving, it also means delivery is driving autonomously. It also means when we look into this huge and growing audience of elderly, all the technology looks into AAL, which stands for Assisted Ambient Living. I don't know if you heard about this. This is all interconnected technology, because you can take it for granted that when generations ago, generations were looking after each other. So the parents were looking for the children, but then 50 years later, the children were looking for the parents. It's not going to happen. So
we've got a lot of autonomous trains going on in the UK. If you catch an aircraft, the chances are that the shuttle will be autonomous, and we have whole railway lines which are completely autonomous. And part of the research which my friend Rory Sutherland has done, he's sort of behavioral psychologist, and it seems to be that because I don't know how to drive a train, I can get on the train and I'm not looking for the driver and what he's doing, but because I can drive a car, if I get into an autonomous vehicle, I'm worried that there's no, I'm not, but I could be worried that there's no driver. And so autonomous trains seem to be perfectly acceptable. Autonomous aircraft seem to be pretty acceptable. Autonomous cars, there's still some people who've got this fear that why is there no driver? Now that can't be very long before we eliminate that, probably by not making them look like cars with a front windscreen and expecting a driver. I mean, and it might just be that design. It's like, I don't know why the Tesla is designed so it looks like a standard car to cope with a big hydrocarbon engine in the front. It doesn't need to be like that. It could look very different.
Let me pick up on this, Marcus. When you look into a BMW dashboard, I don't know how much you're into cars and how much you can recall the dashboard. Recall the dashboard of your car. Shall it be Audi or BMW? And their BMW is actually claiming it's built around the driver. Right. Now I would like to do something. Give me a minute. So the whole thing is built around the car, and everyone is used to the design of an interior that's built around the car. Around the driver. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make this quick and dirty. I'm going to share this one with you. This is the dashboard of the Model 3. Yeah. You can already imagine how it will look like without the steering wheel, because the car is already built. The design is already created for the steering wheel is a disturbing design factor. So everyone in the car, once this car will not have a steering wheel, will not miss anything. Whereas when you're sitting in a BMW, where you're used to having the dashboard built around you, you will have this obnoxious feeling of there's something wrong here. I don't trust this vehicle. The thing is, I mean, who of you would embark a plane with a 95% chance of surviving the flight? By show of hands. Usually no one, right? We want, if the technology is taking control, we want 100% accuracy. But every time you embark a car, the chance of not having an accident is probably not over 80%. Every single time, by statistics, you sit into a car, the chance of not having an accident is not over 80%. But now we have the cars and we have the disengagement rates, and we want to figure out, so disengagement rate, if you haven't read the chat, means that how much does the driver have to interfere in the autonomous activity. This is called disengagement rate, and upon this number, it's evaluated if the car is going to be released to the street as an autonomous vehicle. And you can see that, of course, Google is leading. They started early on with the autonomous driving, and they do nothing but that. Tesla is not somewhere on this list, but also because every 30 seconds by law, the driver has to interfere. And of course, this also blurs the disengagement rate. But this is how we're going to measure. And we want 100% accuracy with autonomous cars, right? No one is going to sit in a car if that's not, right? Are you going to sit in a car if there's a 95% chance of not having an accident? Probably not, but you do every day. And I think this is also a change that we have to accept and go into. I would like to hear Johan here, because Johan mentioned that one of his colleagues believes that autonomous cars will not be happening, even though she is in this area. And I'm curious about the argument. And I'm not going to bounce it. It's not, I want to seriously respect the opinion, and I'm curious about the argument. And you're muted, Johan. Maybe I can help to unmute you. You're still muted. I want to unmute Johan because I'm really curious about this.
Internet also won't work, so it's okay.
Yeah, it seems to be not working already. Maybe Johan is on the phone. It looks like he's talking to someone. Yeah, other opinions. Well, until Johan is back with us. I'm sure once he's back with us, he will raise a flag.
Well, I think I wrote it also in the chat. We had a dialogue with our people are living in Carinthia, and there have been 80 participants on this dialogue. It's the whole day with questions, a little bit workshop, and also Mario had the keynote then at the end of the day. And this was a project through whole Europe. So in Austria, we will have cities Vienna, Linz, Salzburg, and Graz, and Börschach did the same on the same day. And there have been also 23 cities all over Europe, and plus one in Australia, and I think it was New York too. And the interesting was on the questionnaire was, one question was, how positive are the people to autonomous driving? And the average was 52% all over the 25 cities. And only Börschach had a big step over it, is 73%. And what we think why it is because the people had the chance to see the shuttle, drive the shuttle, and get in touch with the project itself. So I think if people see it and can trust it, the fear will go.
So we have Johan back with us now. I don't know, Johan, you were on the call with the patent applicant. Did you hear my question?
No, unfortunately not.
So the question was, you had your colleague, you mentioned your colleague who thinks that it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to argue here. I want to respect the opinion, but I want to hear the argument. What's her argument?
Essentially, she says that the precision of technology, so I'm talking about here the sensors, the LiDAR, pedestrian detection, collision avoidance, will never reach a point where, so what she says is that the more we have of these cars on the road and buses and everything, the more accidents will happen. And this, in long term, this will create a public kind of rejection of the technology, because in each case, when an accident will happen, there will be a huge debate like, who is responsible in case of an autonomous car, hitting, let's say, a dog or a pedestrian or a kid, because the movement of a kid is unpredictable. And she says that this issue is not sufficiently tackled with current algorithms, computer vision, neural networks, all these things which detect these objects, will never reach, let's say, 100% precision. And if it's 99%, she thinks that it's not enough. I have a different opinion. In my view, 90% would be sufficient. And the thing that has to be actually increased is the education. So kids have to receive more education on road safety. You know, they have to be more vigilant when we have more autonomous cars on the road. It's not like you run over the street just because you think the driver will see you and stop. So my take is that the responsibility that this happens has to be shared between, you know, the technology developers. Of course, we need the best algorithms. We need to increase precision. We need to increase accuracy of the sensors, but also the way we are educated about, you know, walking on the street. You know, it's not anymore, for example, that you bike and you're on with one hand on the wheel and the other hand you're on your Facebook, right? This cannot happen anymore. And then you need to increase the fines. So if somebody is driving a bike, you know, with his phone, then you have to fine the person. Or if the kid is behaving extremely, like, I don't know, playing football on the street or something like this, you have to fine the parents. So this shared responsibility has to be accepted. Is the only way, in my opinion.
Johan, by the nature of your work, your life is 5 years ahead of technology, and I know you can't share anything about your work because that kind of defeats the idea of securing a patent. But with abstracting the information that you have, I'm curious if you can share a bit of an outlook.
Well, the most active area in the field of autonomous driving is now the scene recognition. So these LiDAR sensors on autonomous cars, you know, they capture the so-called point cloud data, so 3D data about the environment.
Just a little closer. The LiDAR is on top of the car and sometimes also on the corners of the car, and it's a radar detector of the environment that transforms everything that's happening on the street into data points that by fast learning, the computer or the car recognize as an object, as a human, as a street condition, and so on forth. And this is a technological device that distinguishes fully autonomous cars, for example, Tesla self-driving cars, because they fully work with camera. They have the iWire system. Teslas work with 7 cameras and sensors, but not the LiDAR. So they don't have the capability of converting objects into data items such as accurate as LiDARs can do. Sorry, Johan.
Yeah, that exactly. And the scene recognition, actually, as you said, so the most active field is using convolutional neural networks. This is a type of machine learning, you know, to very fast detect, is this a pedestrian? Is this a dog? Is this another car? And what is the distance? This is very important to detect very precisely the distance, because based on that, you either brake very suddenly, so emergency braking, or you just slow down, or you know, so this is very important, because if this is not precise, then the traffic will be disturbed. You know, cars behind may be impacted. And this is actually the biggest field of, so we received many patent applications from, and you know, the fascinating thing is that companies like Facebook are now filing patent applications in the field. So Facebook AI, the artificial intelligence lab of Facebook, is now fully active in autonomous driving. I don't know if they will do their autonomous car or they just provide the technology for others. But apparently now they are ahead in terms of precision, accuracy of their algorithms to Google, Microsoft, all these like Huawei is also in the field. Everybody is now active in this field, and the core topic is this scene recognition, scene identity, so object detection in real time in the scene. Based on the point cloud data. So you transform this point cloud data, you extract features, and you use these features actually to train your convolutional neural network and then to make predictions. And yeah, it's just crazy how active this field is.
I have another question, and that's to everyone, to the intelligence, the crowd intelligence of this group. Let's decelerate the future journey. I feel like, I don't know, maybe all these companies are too far ahead. is there anyone really, have you heard of anyone really invested in the transition? Like what's happening tomorrow? What's happening next week? What's happening next month? What's happening next 4 months? What's happening next year? So we're talking about 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and this just means somewhere. So we don't know when it's going to be exactly. But what's the transition is going to be so important, because everyone agrees that the worst situation is autonomous cars and and human-driven cars on the street and pedestrians on the street. That's the most dangerous combination. But that's where we are right now, and that's where we have to go through to reach that. It's going to be easy when every vehicle on the street is autonomous and they negotiate what's happening on the street. This is going to be easy. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Maybe Johan, you know as well, or Marcus, or Martin, or Eveline. I felt like, or Peter. I felt like you were in the space. I'm curious about the transition.
Well, in our case, the roadmap actually is clear. So for the next 2 years, there are a lot of pilot tests are planned in cities, in different areas. And in these 2 years, there have to be still an operator on board. So actually the person who is looking after the car and give the information to the passengers and such things. And only in few situations he has to take the joystick and do some driving by his own. And after these 2 years, I think the next step will be the operator won't be on board anymore. So you have some kind of, I don't know, control area where you can support on remote different shuttles on to the same time. And the next step, I think, should be in 5 years, you will have a control center for maybe 100 cars, or in our case, shuttles. So
I'm talking about things like I wear an Apple Watch, and if I'm on the street and there is an autonomous car passing, the Apple Watch could alert me. Because with every situation where there's a driver, I look at the driver, I look in his face, and we negotiate if he should drive or I should walk. That's what I'm talking about. Michi.
May I ask something to Martin? Because we have, I'm living on one of the most frequented corners in Vienna. We have there 7 trams, we have a lot of cars, we have a scooter station, we have a biker station, and a lot of cows, and we have nearly every week one accident down the street. How do you think, or would it be manageable? How could you manage such a situation where you have so many different ways of transport concentrated on a point? And we have a lot of points like this in Vienna. And that's, for example, when I look down the street here, I'm wondering how autonomous mobility would work on a place like this.
Well, I think one important question is in which level you are driving. And I wrote it also in the chat. Actually, we have a discussion about 5 levels. 0 is just what you do with the old car. So the driver have to do everything. Level 1 is if you have a lot of assistance systems, or the parking helper, whatever. And what Tesla and a lot of other cars have is now the level 2. So they have opportunities with the assistant to drive straight on. They have the opportunity to maybe overtake another car. That's it. So, but the driver is always in charge. What we have in Berger is we have the level 3, and that's actually is, we don't say autonomous driving, we say automatic driving, because everything is planned and programmed. So it's like actually the shuttle, what we have is like a tram. He has a dedicated software line where he's driving, and he drives every day the same way, just 1 millimeter, maybe a little bit left or right, but it's still the same. And like a tram, if something in the way, so you get an obstacle, he rings like a tramway, and if the obstacle not moves, he stops. That's it. So, and the line where he's driving is planned and completely organized. Where is the bus stop? Where is the pedestrian cross? Is everything planned in a digital plan? So, and I think the level 3 will be very soon, because every shuttle and every car can do this. But it's like a bus, it stops everywhere. It's not autonomous where you can go wherever you want. So, and the next stop, I think, is that there will be virtual bus stops for cars, so you can pick up the people somewhere. And then maybe in 5 or 6 years, you have really the autonomous driving situation. Like maybe you can remember Kit, yeah? Kit, pick me up, yeah? Then you can do this, yes. But this would take a little bit longer. And I think it's like a tramway now, there is a road, and this will start with this approach.
Maybe also let me add some classroom.
Second question, but aren't you talking about a perfect situation? Because when I look down to reality, people don't cross the street when it's green light. They also cross it when it's red light. The people who are around with bicycle, they don't even know very often about the regulatories on the street. So there is we have down here in our area, we have every day the perfect cows, and I think the problem is how can you introduce this program you were talking in such a situation, in such a surrounding?
Well, I think what we in the moment have is that the sensors and the leaders, what are on our shuttle, they, I think, 10 times or 15 times faster with the reaction that the human ever built can. So actually, the leader system is like a radar. He sends out a wave of light, and with the reflection of the light, he knows where he is and if is something in the way. And the reaction is you can't, no human can be so fast like these systems. And so you have already less accidents than with the humans. Already now. So
yes.
And of course, maybe you have read about, you have also these shuttles in der Seestadt. It's also there are 2 Navia shuttles operating there, and they had last year they had an accident. You saw it in all newspaper. So but what was happened? Some lady was watching on her smartphone and stepped into the shuttle, but in the back of the shuttle. So of course the shuttle couldn't react because he was driving in this direction, and the woman stepped in the back. So that's a situation you never will have under control.
Yes.
But still not with human. If someone dropped in your car, so what shall you do? Huh?
Thank you.
We can't hear you, Nikki.
Nikki's muted.
I just put the 5 levels in the chat because we're using a lot of vocabulary, but I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with all the words being used. So you can look that up. That's what I wanted to interview before. Dieter, it's okay to chime in.
Well, I'm just a user here. I'm not an expert on the technology and whatever it is. I typed it in the chat that I cannot wait to have a car driving autonomously, because that would give me so much time to work and do things. It's not only doing business-wise, but also on reading or whatever you can do then. And as Martin mentioned, the system that are in cars now, I think it's very low level
Level 2.
In terms of, is it level 2 already?
Dynamic cruise control. So it stops when there's an obstacle.
Yeah, but this is unbelievable. I mean, when I had that the first time, I didn't believe it, and I had my hands on the wheel and left it out, but I didn't imagine that the car is really stopping. But once you're used to that, it's really great. And each time I use it and show it to people driving with me, they are scared. So maybe this is also a way of shifting, that more and more cars get these systems, people get used to it, and then the next step to really autonomous driving is possible.
I think the biggest jump will be from 4 to 5 when this driving wheel disappears. It still feels, I mean, it's weird to sit behind. I don't know if you've ever been in a self-driving car or how it is right now, or in a car that has the functionality of partially autonomously drive, which a lot of modern cars have right now. So it works on the highway that the wheel also turns in curves. And it's really weird to watch the wheel turning while you're not touching it. That's already something you have to get used to and start trusting that the whole thing functions. And it's not seamless. It's meandering a little. It's correcting all of the time. Some do it better, some do it worse. I've been in several different makes, and I realized that everyone's working on their own software. So it seems to be not too much of a hardware issue. It's really about software. So who's developing the better software and how to help the car understand from visual recognition, because most of the cars, like all of the cars on the street, and I don't know if any registered car has a LiDAR. So I would say all the cars on the street have visual recognition.
Yeah.
Yes, Martin.
Yeah, if you like, I can show you a slide.
Sure.
If you're interested.
You can share screen.
Yeah, I try. Okay. Can you see it?
That looks good.
Yeah. So actually, that's the levels. So we start from, let's see, we start from 0. No support for a driver, and what we have now, it's not in Germany, right? You have any more look at the level 3 because the shuttle is doing everything. Yeah, and with the level 4, you don't have to think about it, and with the level 5, there is no operator or driver on board. So that's a question. And what we have to, I don't know how it works to the next slide. Ah, yeah, here. That's, for example, if you see what's in a moment is on the car, you have a lot of video cameras, you have a radar, you have a laser scanner, and of course you have also an ultrasound system. If you see in the right side, there is actually no angle where a car is not have sensors and videos where you not control what is going around you. And it's more security already than a human ever can have now. So
yeah.
So that's you can see that's the shuttle what we have, and let me see. And there you see also on the side how many companies are doing this already, and how much Tesla has driven already on kilometers per year, how much what Google does, and so on. And I think one of the next step would not be this shuttle, because this is what we have, is there are 15 people on board. The next should be a kind of taxi, Robocop, whatever. So where 5 or 6 people can go and drive around.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's, for example, a scenario von Ronald Berger, where in which year something will happen, and he mentioned the end of automobility industry, and for nowadays in 10 years. And maybe what we saw so far from Tesla and Waymo and was also Mario Herger always told, it might go faster.
Yeah, I mean, if the case happens that we're going to pull away from the street by the second half of this year, why not just not go back, right? Mm. Why not just take this as an entry jump to not sharing vehicles, not mixing the structure? I don't know.
Yeah. So
how do you guys think about it? I mean, who of you would, if you would have the option to embark a self-driving bus, who would take the bus by show of hands? Everyone. So interesting.
but
And if you have a self-driving car, if you would be alone? So it also feels a lot better if you're in a bus and there are already 14 other people in the bus, right? It feels like, okay, if they have to make this decision, it can't be too wrong. But if you're in a car,
well, I would prefer a self-driving drone.
yeah.
It's
That's the third conversation about the vertical transport.
It's more convenient. It's technically easier than with on the street.
With a way higher acceptance burden to climb. Because if the air is going to be busy, people will get nervous, right? If a car bumps against a tree, there's a car in the tree. And if there's a car bumping against another car, there's two cars. But what if parts of a flying object hit people on the street because it just drops? So I know that there's a lot going on with the vertical autonomous mobility. And I think it's really interesting about the hybrid cars that drive and fly, and the drones that are taxis in Dubai that you can already book. I have strong doubts that this is going to be a condition, an option available to the public. I don't know what you think about it. Marcus, what are your thoughts? Or no, Johan, you must know, right? You secure patents. How much is in vertical mobility? How much is happening there?
Well, what we see now with drones, and I will start with this part, is autonomous drones that, for example, in case of a pandemics, they disinfect the city. So the drones fly over the city, they detect locations where there are lots of people, they go there, they tell the people, please go away, and they disinfect that specific area. Or they call autonomous ground vehicles to disinfect that specific area. So this is now very active. Regarding autonomous robots and taxis, which are drones, like in the picture that I think Martin shared, is not that active, to be honest. So we don't see so much of applications. I think the technology is not yet there because, you know, while with an autonomous taxi on the street, you can make it very safe. With an autonomous drone, which is carrying people, I think we are not so close yet. That's my feeling, actually.
I agree. Although also only because they can fly autonomously, start and land autonomously, doesn't mean that the whole system works, right? The technology of the isolated vehicle is there, but I'm not sure about the choreography.
In particular, because of people will be much more reluctant, you know, to fly with an autonomous vehicle than to drive on the street with it. I mean, already with the plane, we are much more like in the beginning when you took your first flight, you know, any turbulence was quite scary, right?
Who of you would go on a flight with a drone, autonomous drone?
Not yet. Let's say a short one. So let's say a short flight.
Well, if you climb to 8 meters and it drops, you're dead anyways.
Yes. But
what you saw on the picture was actually a touristic application. So the idea was to go from our village, from Börtschach, to the Pyramidenkogel, which is one of our, in Corinth, is one of the top 3 touristic attraction, and go back. So, and this technical possible, and it works already, as we saw it from Ehang in China, where they have a similar touristic approach from over a bay for tourists. And the funny thing is, because this shuttle, what you saw in the picture, is or should be produced in Austria from FACC. So they will produce, I don't know what Corona does, but actually they should produce in this year 1,500 pieces.
You know, one issue with drones is, I mean, this kind of a smaller, which carry people is And there were a few applications on the mechanical side is when this autonomous taxi, which is a drone, hits, for example, a fleet of birds, because they fly on lower altitude when there are more birds, right?
Mm.
And this is apparently one of the big concerns.
They can't land in Hudson River.
Exactly, and even a big plane, you know, when the engine hits a bird, it can go on fire. So these smaller propellers of the drone, they are destroyed if you hit a bird, right?
Mm. Well, but I think so far I saw it. There are 16 independent rotors on it.
Mhm.
So, and what also is interesting on the drone is they can stay in the air.
Not
So
without propeller.
Hmm?
Not without a propeller. Not without.
No. That's not. But for of course, but the plane have to go and it is. So if you have the drone and there is, I don't know, a bird swarm is coming, you can stop and let them pass.
Yes, but what if the birds don't stop and go into it?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, the birds are, you know, not really intelligent.
Well, but I think they can recognize obstacles. So
We can, but this is the issue that these are very unpredictable movements. Like take us this kind of a bird. I think it's I mean, this bigger white bird, you know, very frequent here in the Netherlands. I forgot the name. Very aggressive. So they attack actually the drones. There were cases here, like the Dutch police was flying drones over the beach to tell people to keep the 1.5 meter distance. And these kind of a birds, I have to check the name, attack the drone really, like they really attacked it.
Okay.